And good morning. It is Wednesday, May 21st, just past 10:30 a.m. And my name is Ryan Belmore. I'm the publisher of ALXnow, and we're being joined this morning from Mayor Alyia Gaskins. Mayor, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
Good. Almost forgot to introduce myself there. We were talking for a second prior to joining, and it just seems like this week, and it's probably the impending holiday. A lot is getting crunched into a couple days here.
I think that's right. I think everyone's trying to get everything done before the long weekend. So many meetings, many events, lots going on.
Yeah, and the schedule is absolutely packed for the city with events. We do have our fingers crossed, as far as I know, as joined as of just a couple minutes ago. The community cookout is still on for tonight somehow, unless you've heard something different. But a whole bunch of events.
Yeah, as of right now, it is still on. I will tell people, please stay tuned in case we have to have a rain update. Because one of the things that's so great is they are outside and really pull together the whole community. So we're watching the weather closely. Speaking of events, I'm actually coming to you from our fire department's training facility because we just had our promotional celebration and we're able to promote several new battalion chiefs, EMS lieutenants, fire lieutenants. So really exciting morning already.
Excellent. And you jump from event to event daily, and I know you have some help at City Hall. But I'm wondering, just looking at your schedule and looking at the calendar of events, how do you balance it?
I don't know that there's always a great balance because balance would mean all things are held equal. I think that myself and my aide, we try and find a good harmony and make sure that we are attending events that represent the full range of priorities in our city. So from the arts to parks and rec to public safety, making sure that we're spending time at each of those different topic areas, but also trying to get around the entire city. So it means sometimes we don't make everything means sometimes my kids and my family are coming with me, but we're trying to do our best to make sure that I'm available and present to hear and respond to the things going on in our community.
You're at the fire department, and we mentioned
Yeah.
weather. I just want to quickly touch base on the severe thunderstorm of Friday. When I looked, the max I saw was, which is a lot, 16,000 customers. That doesn't mean residents because there could be more than one resident per customer. On Friday without power, obviously, part of the parkway just reopened late last night. Streets closed, trees down. Just wondering any takeaways, any recap from that event, and anything going on with all the flooding and the rain that we're seeing over the last couple of days.
Yeah. So I would say the storm, I mean, the damage was horrific, not just here in the city, but across the region. I think, especially in Fairfax County. I think not only did we see pretty sustained power outages, I know there were some areas in the West End that didn't get power back until late Sunday, early Monday, which is really, really hard if you think about food, when you think about communications. We also had a lot of traffic lights and signals go out, so that required an amplified response from APD and our other first responders. A lot of trees down, so I know Parks and Rec as well as Tess have been on it and trying to get out and still continue to pick up debris. I think lessons learned. I think we mobilized and did the best we could. I think we are working to increase and amplify our communications with Dominion so that we're able to make sure our residents have adequate expectations or know when power will be restored because it's a long time if you're waiting. So that's one thing. I think also continuing to engage with them in conversations about, the resiliency and how do we make sure. I think we're hearing that it's going to be a summer that's going to have more storms and potential more significant weather events. So how do we make sure we're able to be resilient as possible during that?
On Saturday, following that storm, I was attending from afar. I was out of town for a
Yeah.
wedding, and I had breakfast, lunch, and I believe I started dinner during your city council public hearing, almost 9 hours long. What are your big takeaways from the meeting? And you okay with the 9 hour meeting?
Um, that was a lot. That was a lot. I will say one of the takeaways is I am really grateful for the opportunities that we do provide for community engagement. I think that we heard on many docket items different perspectives and sort of angles for considering the issues that we were facing. And I think that's important. I don't know that I don't want a short meeting just to have a short meeting. I want our meetings to be an effective use of our community's time and our council's time. And I think we did that. I also think that these weren't necessarily easy issues, whether you're thinking about lights, whether you're thinking about zoning text amendments related to ADUs or other EV chargers. We had gas powered leaf blowers. We had our procedural resolution. So we had a lot of really meaty stuff. And I think we gave each item the attention and the thoughtful discussion that it needed and deserved. I will say I couldn't have predicted it would have been 9 hours. In fact, my husband was out of town, so my childcare had to leave, and my kids spent the last half of the meeting running in the back pews and watching and participating in public service themselves.
I did hear you mention that you were coordinating childcare during one of the conversations. Obviously, the news and conversations are going to be about the ban on gas-powered leaf blower bans. It's going to be about the lights at the Episcopal High School. What's your biggest takeaway from the day that maybe everybody else isn't talking about?
So there are probably two. So one, and I think this one we talked more so about on our Tuesday legislative meeting, and so I think it was on consent on Saturday, which is our council procedural ordinance. So every council has to set a set of rules for how we will operate. And when I started, I asked my colleagues as well as staff, I said, all of us have been through a lot of these meetings. What do we need to do in order to run more efficiently and effectively? What could that look like? And so we put forth changes that I hope the community will welcome. One being that we're going to move our oral reports to the beginning. I think it's important for the business of council to be at the front of the meeting so that people can hear and know what's going on and tune in, and they don't have to wait 9 hours or stay up late on a Tuesday. The other thing we're doing is we're going to open up space to have some proclamations on Saturdays. I think that's important to our commitments for inclusivity and engagement, because not everyone can make a Tuesday meeting, but they deserve to be recognized and celebrated. We are going to have one consent docket. Right now, we have a roll call consent, and then we have another regular consent. And so bringing it together in one sort of concise docket item is important and helps us streamline our work. And then we are also going to be moving the votes on boards and commissions towards the end of the meeting, so that if we have items that require substantial discussion, again, they're earlier when people can watch and engage. So that's an exciting one that I think about probably gets buried under there. I'd say the other is we actually had a case that is the first in the city to leverage one of our zoning for housing tools. This is specifically the apartment building where they're converting some of the laundry rooms into new units. And I think, many people had questions about zoning for housing. I think the first thing they talk about were the changes we made to single family zones. But what gets lost is that there were 6 other policies within that legislation. And here you have a building that is making a change on its own footprint. It's doing so without any city money or engagement. It's providing new units that while they're not committed affordable, so like dedicated, committed, affordable units, they are affordable, and they are at a lower price point than many of the units we get. They are next to transit. They are next to services and job opportunities just down the street from our community college. And so I think that's what we want when we think about creating housing opportunities and options where people can be connected and able to stay in and supported in our community.
And I shared some information this morning about the Seminary Road, the screening form, and as well as a couple days ago about Samuel Madden, to affordable housing. Just wondering if you could touch base, share anything additional that people should know about those 2 projects.
Yeah, so I guess I will start with focus on Samuel Madden because this is one that we've actually gotten a couple emails about to the council. I think the first thing to know is that this is a two-phase project. So the total development will be about 532 new affordable homes. What was recently the exciting news was that phase one, which is Samuel Madden North, has just gone to closing and now is pulling permits and will begin to move to construction. Phase one is going to be, I think it's around 207 new homes. So it's initially 66. All 66 of those will return. So there'll be units at 30% of AMI and below. But this will also be a mixed income property where we're able to provide housing opportunities for people making $40,000, $50,000, all the way up to 80% of AMI. So it's a really exciting project. Everyone who lives there now has the right to return. So we do a one-for-one replacement. And then when phase two is closed on, that will not only bring with it new homes, but also more open space, I think at a live food hub, as well as a childcare center. So that's really exciting. Another great affordable housing project is Witter Place. I'm not sure if you're going to cover that, but we just had the groundbreaking for that yesterday. And that is 94 new affordable homes on Duke Street. And it's really exciting project because in this case, we are not only able to provide units to people at 40 to 60% of AMI, most of these are family size units. We know it's often hard to get 2 and 3 bedrooms, sometimes 4 bedrooms, and that's what this property provides. It also has a huge mural that will be on the side representing our city's commitment to art. And then we'll also bring with it some other new open space commitments as well.
Excellent. Did not know about the ribbon cutting yesterday. I need to get on another press list to make sure that I get to these ribbon cuttings. Yeah. Excellent. And then the Seminary Road project will offer 31 affordable townhomes, and the screening form is now available for those interested. And that came out via the city earlier today or yesterday, where people can start filling out the form. It is not an application, but it's an interest form to start the process. And there's one thing of important note on that one that I was writing about this morning that I noticed is, and probably with many of these, is there are upcoming information sessions that you must attend in order to move through the process. So with any of these, make sure you're paying attention to the steps that you have to take in order to apply and be eligible for these.
Yes, and I would just say it's great. I appreciate ALXnow for putting out that information. Anyone who is interested in following along or learning more about these opportunities, through our e-news, you can select housing and you can get regular updates about rental, but also affordable home ownership opportunities as well, and the programs that you might be eligible for. It's never too early to start the process and start getting that information.
We're going to kind of we're almost on the zoning. We started into this regarding some zoning. And Drew had asked if there was any appetite for reviewing residential zoning regulations to streamline and clarify what homeowners are allowed to do to improve their own property. So I think Drew is looking for, we hear about all these projects and what's going on and what's not going on. If there's any effort underway to kind of help residents very simply understand what they could do to their property to increase with ADUs or et cetera.
Yes. So one of the things I'm really excited about is at the end of last year, we brought on a new staff person, and that is Paul Stoddard. Paul Stoddard is a deputy in planning and zoning. And the reason why we brought him on was to kind of begin to look at all of our planning and zoning and our permitting processes and to take a step back and understand what's working and what's not working. We have heard some people have had a tremendous experience. We've heard other people, whether they are a resident or a small business or a developer, that they have found the process really confusing and difficult to navigate. And so Paul is going to be, and I would encourage Drew, who asked the question, to send us a 311, but he's trying to get out in the community and talk to residents and businesses. He's trying to understand how people are navigating the projects. What is it they wanted to do and where did they get stuck? What did we not understand about maybe what you were asking us for? And then the hope is to create some specific checklist that are really easy for people to navigate and really map out the process. I keep saying we need almost like a flow chart or like a 101 video, because you shouldn't have to have a master's in these areas in order to be able to navigate it. He's also going to be working to start our One Start Center, which would basically be that there's no wrong door to come in. If you have a question, we're going to provide you with the concierge concierge service to make sure you get from start to finish and don't have any holdup. So all that to say, I'm excited we have a staff person who's dedicated full time to looking at this comprehensively.
And I experienced what Drew is speaking about firsthand when I was on the zoning board of review, where people would go and put up fences. They were under 6 feet. They thought that they were doing everything right. And then they would find out that they need to be 50% open, or they need to be different if they're on a corner lot. And so there's always room to improve on everything. But I'm glad he asked that question. And 311 really should be everybody's best friend.
Yes. I will say, if you are not using it already, I know there are things we can improve on, but we're working on it. And I think it's probably the fastest way either to get to staff, to me, or to all of the council.
I'm trying to tie in some questions regarding Saturday while we're still on Saturday. Obviously, or not obviously, maybe some people haven't heard it, but there a ban or a phase out on the gas powered leaf blowers was approved, and we
Yes.
are at 18 months. And people are wondering, now that that's been taken care of, what does Amy asks, what does the city plan to do about the noise from cars with souped up engines and mufflers that cruise the streets of Old Town? Do we not have noise ordinances? Can they be enforced? Is this another 311? Is this contacting the Alexandria Police Department non-emergency line? Are there going to be looks at the ordinances that deal with these things?
Yep. So I guess let me take a step back. So we do have a noise ordinance. So just want to start there. I'd say the second thing that's important is we have been thinking a lot about noise overall across the city. We recognize that that can be a quality of life issue. And so one of the things in the budget this year that we approved is there's new funding for an additional noise inspector. And so that includes a range of things from when we have buskers on King Street who are maybe playing louder than they should or using amplified music when that's not allowed, to other noise and nuisance issues happening in the community. And the goal of this position is to have somebody who's available on kind of those off hours. So really late at night, during weekends, and making sure that we advance our capacity there. So that would be another thing, is that we're increasing our capacity to be able to investigate these issues. And I know that also came up as part of our new approval of regulations around short-term rentals and making sure, like, when we get noise complaints about parties or other usage. So that's two things that are underway. As it relates specifically to noise from the souped up mufflers and cars, let me look into this. I know previously there were some challenges to what we could and could not do based on state law. I need to see if there were any changes made in this most recent session. And what I can do is I can email Ryan, and Ryan can send that out, or we can find a way to post that. But I know that specific noise falls under a different set of regulations and requirements. I'd say for now, probably your best bet is to call the non-emergency line for APD. But also, if you're on a street where this is happening repeatedly, I would say flag a 311 for us so we can track that and maybe do some proactive staging of our inspectors or enforcement in that area.
On the gas powered leaf blower bans, was there any discussion over the public hearings or legislative meeting about what's next? Is there anything else that council has an eye on, or that's been a pain in the rear for residents that you're thinking of next?
So I would say that specifically to that issue, what's next is a number of members of my colleagues raised, how are we thinking about incentives to support the phase out for residents? So the city is going to do ours right away. I think our goal is within a year, but we heard from a lot of business owners that they had questions, they have additional concerns, they want to know more about the technology that's appropriate. And so staff is supposed to come back to us around what types of incentives or rebates or partnerships might be available. So I think that's kind of specific on that issue. Other than that, I can't say another thing that is rising top of mind for me right now from that.
Something that I've thought of is we have a landscaper, and they are not based in the city. And I just thought about it when I was asking the last question. And I think maybe residents in the city are going to have to work together on some communication of
Yes.
how I let my vendor that comes to my house know of the changes that are coming up. Is something that I just popped in my head because he's probably not, as much as I want him to be reading ALXnow, he's probably not reading ALXnow. He's not attending your meetings, and he's an outside vendor. And I know that the city contacted 80 or so landscaping companies, but obviously they can't reach them all. So, I wonder what opportunity we have to, as residents as well as the city, to work together on getting changes like that out.
Yes. So I think we're going to have to work together on communications and maybe even a fact sheet that people can share. I'd say the other thing is, and I'm not going to say certain jurisdictions because I don't want to speak for others before they get there. But I will say, since Saturday, I have been contacted by other regional mayors and chairs. So I think there are going to be other Northern Virginia jurisdictions coming to do this pretty soon. We know DC has a ban, and I think there's even some cities in Maryland. So I think that sooner than later, you're going to start to see, you're not going to see as much of a disconnect or differences in policies across the region. I think slowly more and more are going to be going in the same direction. And hopefully then that makes it a little easier for these companies that are working across multiple jurisdictions.
Wanted to jump back about another week to the Economic Summit. I got a opportunity to attend the first good portion of it. It was a long one, but I attended a while of it. And wondering, there is a survey out now. If anybody did attend, they are looking for people to fill that out. If you did attend or if you didn't attend, and there's all of the information is available. Biggest takeaways from the summit?
So, one was just the amount of people who wanted to engage. So I think we had 500 people sign up, and then on site a little over 300. And that's a lot for a meeting that was from 3 to 7. You're right, it was long. So that many businesses and residents and stakeholders wanting to show up and lend their voice, I think is just amazing. I'd say the other takeaway for me, it's just how important getting this economic development strategy together and a clear plan is going to be. As I was preparing for the summit, one of the things that stood out to me was that we have not had a comprehensive strategy since 2007. Yet that 2007 plan is what laid the foundation for the Potomac Yard Metro, for the landmark redevelopment, for the Virginia Tech Innovation Campus, for some of the things we're doing around the waterfront. And so I think being able to have a clear North Star of where do we want to go is going to be essential for the future, and making sure that that's citywide. I'd say the other takeaway for me is I tried to bounce around to different work sessions and hear what people were saying. In almost every one, arts and culture came up. And so I think there is a hunger and a desire to really think about how we continue to invest in and support arts, entertainment, and cultural uses in our city. People are looking for experiences. They're looking to elevate and promote what we have here. And how do we leverage that as part of the Alexandria story?
One of the things I found fascinating when I served on the Arts Commission board for the city was, and I don't think many people know it, and sometimes we're our worst cheerleaders, is how with every, and I'm not going to remember the terminology because it's been a couple of years, but with every new big project, they are required to find a way to do some kind of art and hire art and have it done. You mentioned the wall on one of the properties that's going to be a piece of art. I think we could all do a better job of being a cheerleader and saying, look at with every new project that comes along, there will be a piece of art. And I heard something on the radio the other day about just how art has saved some towns from coal and mining out west, and that's where they found their new identity. So I think there's a huge opportunity for it, and I think Alexandria does do a good job with it.
Yes. And I spoke yesterday to our arts commission, and we talked a little bit about kind of what are all the different leverage points we have. One piece is in new development and kind of having murals and place things that we do as it relates to placemaking and engaging artists. I think another is how do we think about more performance space and more venues for artists and creatives. And we talked a lot about the One Voice concert that was a couple weeks ago, and this was our city's first ever citywide choral festival, and it was sold out. It was sold out, and people left asking for more and wanting to see this be an annual event. We then talked about how do you engage like artists and creatives in our processes. Everything doesn't have to be a Zoom or a long community meeting. There are ways that we can leverage the arts to really envision and imagine what we want in our city and what we want some of these new projects to look like. So I think there's a lot on the horizon. I think the good news is we have so much talent and untapped potential here.
And grant season is coming up for the arts. I remember
Yes.
that probably coming up here in May, at the end of this month. It's probably going through right now, but I encourage anybody who is interested in arts to attend Arts Commission meeting or just review all of the applicants who apply for these grants that come from the city. $100 to $160,000 somewhere in there, if I remember right. And it's really fascinating to see how many arts organizations come out and apply for these grants and what they're doing in the city. Back to the economic summit. So we came out of there, the economic summit, with a plan for Potomac Yard, a plan for the power plant, a plan for everything, right?
I wish. So what we came out of there with were sort of high level, I'd say themes and priorities that we want to focus on. I'd say that is everything from being really specific about what are the tools we might need in order to diversify our local economy, looking at how do we pivot and shift given some of our reliance on the federal government and sort of how we navigate a changing environment. Arts and culture, which I've already spoken about, efforts to recruit and retain small businesses, efforts to invest in and support developing a strong workforce pipeline. We got a lot of talent, but how are we driving talent into the jobs that we know are going to be here and the industries that want to locate here? And then thinking about for major areas like Potomac Yard, like Eisenhower, these other sites, what are the types of catalysts we want to explore? My understanding is that the next step is there's a survey now. There'll be some continued focus groups that the consultants will be doing with AEDP. I think there will also be some continued community conversations over the summer. All that, along with the data collection, because we got to pair our stories and our perspectives with the actual data about what the market is telling us, will then be put together into a draft plan. And then that plan will be presented to council for consideration. And I think that's end of summer, early September, but I need to check on timing.
So you mentioned the 2007 plan brought Potomac Yard Metro, which is celebrating 2 years this week, I believe.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and you mentioned at the economic summit, right almost off the top, that you didn't want this to be a Potomac Yard summit. But is one of the things that you hope for out of this some plans, ideas, initiatives for that area, as well as all the other areas you mentioned?
Absolutely. And I think the reason why I said I didn't want this to just be the Potomac Yard Summit is I think we do ourselves a disservice or miss an opportunity if we're not thinking citywide, because then we are looking at one area to solve every problem and to do everything, and it can't. I think that we are fortunate that while we are only 15 square miles, there's a lot of really exciting areas within our city and different cultures and unique aspects and assets to be able to lift up. And so I want us to keep thinking citywide so that we don't feel Potomac Yard has to solve everything and have every dream that we've ever wanted, because then it's not going to be the place we want. It's not going to be the experience of walkability, innovation, sustainability, the different words that we use when we talk about there. What I hope will come out specifically for Potomac Yard is I think we continue to hear from residents about their vision for the area. And so hearing with more clarity when folks say, oh, I didn't want an arena, but I want an entertainment use. what does that mean? Like we gotta get behind, we gotta get at the next layer and see what that looks like. Or when folks say, I want a hotel, but I don't want it to be a big hotel, or I want retail, but this we need to get into filling out what are those, and then what are the trade-offs that are going to be necessary in order to move those projects forward, and what as a city do we think is the appropriate role for the city to help spur some of that development, because it's not going to be easy in the current climate.
I think I'll try to wrap this in here now. We just went through a long budget process, budget palooza,
Mm-hmm.
and there was no increase to the tax rate that the
Yes.
city council decided to make. We got a couple questions about what will it take to one day for the council to say we're actually going to reduce the tax rate. Is it these big projects? I know Councilor Chapman at a recent chamber breakfast said, we got to think big, and we got to, we got to bring up things like the arena if we really want to change the tax base in the city. Is it big projects across the city, or is just flat no tax rate the best that we're going to do under this current administration and under this current chaos of not knowing what's going to happen?
Yes. So a few things. One, it was budget bonanza, pothole palooza. So
Oh, okay.
I'm learning all these things too.
All right.
So I guess I would say that I agree with my colleague Councilman Chapman. If we are looking to one day get to a state where we're able to reduce taxes, then that is directly tied to our big swings around economic development. At the end of the day, when we do the budget, there's the expenses we have and the revenue we're bringing in. And our expenses are changing. The needs that people in our city have are getting more complex. Some of the infrastructure that we have is old, it is aging, and it is desperate need of repair. And that doesn't get easier as the years go on. So whether we're talking about needs related to food access or schools or pay for our firefighters and teachers and police, these are things we cannot avoid doing. And so we need a way to pay for those. And so big economic development projects that create more opportunities and revenue, they're the key to eventually, hopefully, seeing tax decreases. And I think you see that in places. I look at, neighboring cities like Falls Church. Falls Church, because of the development they are seeing, they have been able to consider types of decreases. Loudoun County, I'm not saying we need a data center strategy, but you see what happens because of what they've been able to do and sort of what is booming because of their data center investments in order to then reduce their taxes. We have to find what is our strategy, what is the thing that works for us, and what's going to be that big swing. That's the only way we get there in a time when other sources of revenue are decreasing, when people's jobs and economic stability is changing, and when the needs people have in our community are growing and more complex.
And for those who haven't been following along closely enough, is pretty much its balance, or it's getting the commercial and office space closer to residential to balance out, because
Yes.
the residential residents carry the majority of the tax base. So it's trying to bring in more office, more commercial, more big. So that's why it can't be more houses per se, which would be welcome, but it needs to be that commercial or industrial tax base. So if I got it right.
Yep. No, they're connected. It's definitely got to be the commercial and the economic side. The housing piece is still important because anything that we bring in, people need places for their workers to live, and so it's connected.
Let me see if I can quickly go through some questions here. Speaking of development, John asks, what can the city do now to move along the redevelopment of the GenOn power plant in Old Town North?
So I think you are going to start to see that get a refresh and accelerated in new ways. My understanding is that they were working to secure some additional financing and have been able to do that. And so I know they were just at the Parks and Rec Commission about a week ago. They're starting to do the rounds again, and I think they're ready to get back up and running and sort of moving forward with the next phases of that development.
I don't know anything about this one, so I hope it is a legit thing. What is the city of Alexandria doing to coordinate with Nova Parks on the changes they are proposing for Winkler Biological Preserve?
Yep. So we are actually I don't have specifics for you yet. What I can tell you is we have questions about those changes as well. And we have questions about kind of the future of Nova Parks. I think most folks know the executive director is going to be retiring. So we have invited him to come before the council. I think it's at one of our June meetings. I'll have to confirm the date to sort of talk about recent changes and the future moving forward, as well as their next set of plans. So stay tuned, but those are questions that we'll be asking. And if you have other specific questions, I'd say send it to the council before our June meeting so that we can ask those directly.
And so let me see here. And then we have schools. Obviously, redistricting plans are going through the school board and school committees right now. How close are you or city council participating in that? Or will you be participating as the decision comes in less than a month?
Yeah. So we don't participate in terms of a vote. This is a school board decision. What I will say that we do participate in is all of us are following along in different ways. All of us have received emails, questions from residents. And so I know we are working with our liaisons and with the school board to make sure that they are getting that information as well, forwarding that on and sharing any questions that it raises for us. Councilman Chapman and I are on the City Schools Commission. And so we have been asking for regular updates because while it is not solely a city decision, any decision that is made has implications for the whole city. And so we're following along closely. One thing I did want to say before you move off schools, and it goes back to our Saturday public hearing, one of the major projects that we approved was the modernization of George Mason Elementary School. And I think this is an important project as it relates to creating high quality learning environments for our young people, but also building the additional capacity and space we need for a growing city. One correction I want to make, I think there's been some misinformation in the community about council's change to the fence. The fence does not cut through the baseball field. That is not true. Where the fence is located would be directly up against the sort of playground and the turf area as proposed. So we would still have a usable baseball field. And I think part of that decision was making sure that we are responsive to ACPS's concerns about safety, but also that we are making sure that we continue to have community assets and open space that all of us can share and enjoy.
Somebody had a question, and I'm not sure if you are a field technician, and if you can answer Brian's question. Just what makes Alexandria build so many plastic grass sports fields that are very hot, expensive, and unhealthy?
I am not a field technician, so I probably don't have the best answer to you. What I will say is something that we have been thinking a lot with fields is the demand for our fields is it is insane. And that's a good thing because it means there are a lot of people who want to get out and engage in recreation, whether that's soccer, baseball, all of the things. And I think when you look at the wear and tear sometimes on our traditional fields, it then means, every game is canceled each time it rains, or anytime you get that wear and tear, it's much harder to repair. So I think some of it has to do with just how do we put in, how as we create new fields, do we do so in a way that we can meet the demand and the heavy usage that is happening on these areas over and over and over again. I'd have to get you more specific information on how we choose the type of product and quality and standards and what that looks like. And I'm happy to follow up and do that.
Excellent. What is the next big thing for council? What's coming up in over the summer? What's coming up maybe this month, next month? What's the next big thing people should know about?
Yep. So
what's the next big leaf blower decision?
Yeah, next big leaf blower decision. Let me tell it to you like this, just a couple things on the horizon. So there are several things that the council is going to need to get additional updates on. So one is our community health needs assessment. So what is the state of health in our community? That's going to be coming up on the horizon. I'd say second, when this council was sworn in, we created a few subcommittees in order to help us kind of think through some of the ways we work and do business. This was a big priority of mine. One of those subcommittees was creating a personnel committee so that we can make sure that we are putting in place kind of clear management standards for our 4 employees, the clerk, the city manager, the city attorney, and the independent police review auditor. So in June, we will be presenting a new process for that and really thinking about how we even share some of that with the community. So we're transparent about how we are managing and leading. Another was we had a committee that was put together to explore whether or not there should be council standing committees. So in other cities, you might have a committee on public safety, a committee on public health, a committee on parks and rec. The role was so that council can really spend more time in that issue, study it, understand it, and learn it before it's presented to the council. Because the truth is, sometimes now we get it presented on a Tuesday and we're voting on it on a Saturday. And so this is part of kind of thinking about ways to modernize our government and be more effective. That presentation will come up in June, and I think council will make a decision on whether or not we want to move forward. Another thing we were looking at was an overall look at our boards and commissions. The truth is we have a lot and some we cannot fill. Some have not had quorum in months and have not been meeting. And so we're going to be using June to do some assessment on that. I think we're going to get up, potentially, we're going to see updates on some major development projects like Robinson Terminal North, as well as sort of the next phase of the power plant. And then towards the end of the summer, early fall, when we first get back, I think council will be needing to make a decision on the waterfront flood mitigation project and the pipes and the pump station there. So that's a little bit of what else we're working on.
A quick board for what my 2 cents are worth. I come from a different city, and in that city, you could serve up to 2 boards as long as there wasn't conflict of interest between the 2. Here in Alexandria, it's pretty much 1. There are like four commissions where you can serve on 2. Maybe an opportunity, because the people who donate time, are more likely to donate even more time. So, maybe you can't sit on planning as well as zoning, but maybe you could sit on planning as well as arts.
Yes.
Or something of the sort. I do want to make one quick note while we are here that the community cookout has been canceled for this evening at Ruby Tucker 2 weeks in a row, unfortunately, due to weather. So tonight's Ruby Tucker Center community cookout is canceled. The next one will be next Thursday. We're going to next Thursday at Mason at Van Dorn, 140 South Van Dorn Street. So that's Justin from the city. So just wanted to bring that up while we're here live. And Mayor, anything that we did not get to? Obviously, we could talk for a couple hours, but anything that you wanted to get to today that we did not?
I just one last thing I forgot. You asked me about leaf blowers. I just started here. The other major thing council will vote on before our summer recess is the update to our green building policy. So forgot about that. But other than that, no, I think you covered it. And as always, I encourage people to stay connected with me. If you know any youth ages 14 to 18, we have our next mayoral youth forum this Saturday at 9:30 at Charles Houston Rec Center. So would love for you to invite any young people to attend that. And then next week, we will be celebrating the graduation of our Titans at George Mason. So that'll be a really exciting week.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, I thank you for joining us, and we'll do some follow-ups. I took a couple notes, so we will get some answers on some questions from myself as well as that we all had. And I appreciate it. Anything for Memorial Day weekend?
I think I'll be catching some rest and sitting at the pool with my family.
Excellent. Well deserved. Well, we appreciate it, Mayor. Thank you for taking the time.
All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate the questions.
All right. So that is Mayor Alyia Gaskins. Gail wrote in while we were speaking and wondered if this is being recorded. Can we watch later? Work being interrupted. There's been some great questions. I'm always so impressed with the mayor's responsiveness, honesty, and answers. Yes. If you were watching this live, only caught a minute of it or a couple of moments, available to watch online, ALXnow.com. You can watch anytime afterward and share it as well. I want to thank the mayor for joining us today. She'll be back with us in June. Until then.